What separates this phenomenon from standard celebrity marketing is how Jungkook transcends the usual ambassador framework. Most partnerships rely on a mix of strategic posting, photo releases, and appearances. But in Calvin Klein's case, Jungkook's presence created a movement. Every campaign drop felt like a cultural event. The fashion house didn't just gain new customers, it gained a new identity shaped by Jungkook's global aura, one that now speaks the language of both youth and luxury at the same time. The report highlights regions that have seen the most drastic changes in Calvin Klein's sales and online traction: the United States, South Korea, Japan, and several Southeast Asian markets. Interestingly, the momentum doesn't come from traditional advertising, it comes from organic engagement tied to Jungkook's image. The term organic is essential here because what happens with Jungkook cannot be manufactured. His authenticity acts as a bridge between art and commerce, a rare quality that has made Calvin Klein's messaging not only visible, but deeply relevant. A key section of the global report focuses on the psychological factor driving Calvin Klein's resurgence. It explains that Jungkook represents more than aspirational beauty or celebrity status. He represents evolution. His presence signals cultural transition, where classic Western minimalism meets contemporary Korean influence, and where individualism merges with emotional subtlety. The synthesis of these identities doesn't just sell clothes, it sells connection. Calvin Klein's design philosophy has always revolved around simplicity and sensual confidence. But when Jungkook entered the picture, that simplicity found new meaning. His physical presence in campaigns, his natural body language, and his effortless confidence turned minimalism into magnetism. It's not about posing, it's about translating silence into power. And Calvin Klein has never had a translator quite like him. Market experts in the report describe the Jungkook effect as a soft disruption. Unlike aggressive marketing surges driven by overexposure, this one flows quietly but decisively. Every drop of content featuring him, whether a still image or a short campaign clip, leads to a global reaction that feels immediate yet lasting. Brands chase this kind of impact for decades. But Calvin Klein achieved it in a single year through one strategic partnership. The report compares Jungkook's campaigns with previous Calvin Klein ambassadors, including globally recognized figures who had strong regional impacts. None of them, however, reached the same level of sustained engagement across every age, demographic, and market segment. Jungkook's effect isn't confined to one continent. It stretches from the luxury districts of Tokyo to the digital spaces of New York, from Parisian runways to Seoul's cultural heartbeat. Wherever fashion holds relevance, his presence reinforces Calvin Klein's dominance. More interestingly, analysts noticed a phenomenon that rarely happens in luxury branding: the emotional retention rate. In plain terms, audiences didn't just engage once and move on, they kept returning. This pattern aligns with Jungkook's natural ability to sustain attention without oversaturation. It's not about constant appearances, but the depth of each moment. His silence between campaigns doesn't reduce anticipation, it multiplies it. Calvin Klein benefits not only from what he shows, but also from what he withholds. Inside the data tables and performance metrics, a pattern repeats itself. Every new release featuring Jungkook drives a ripple effect across other fashion houses. Competitor brands experience a temporary dip in engagement whenever Calvin Klein drops a campaign starring him. This level of indirect influence, where his presence affects market behavior outside his own partnership, is what economists in the report call halo dominance. It's the kind of power that can't be purchased through advertising budgets, because it stems from authenticity and global attachment. Jungkook's image for Calvin Klein has been carefully minimal, yet it carries layers of meaning. His black and white campaign photos, stripped of embellishment, redefine masculinity in a way that's raw, vulnerable, and confident. That combination resonates deeply with Gen Z and millennial consumers who value truth over perfection. It's no coincidence that Calvin Klein's brand searches spiked not only among young women, but also among men seeking to mirror Jungkook's understated appeal. The report concludes that Calvin Klein's digital evolution is inseparable from Jungkook's cultural position. His presence bridges the brand into modern relevance, not by changing what Calvin Klein is, but by amplifying what it always wanted to express. The quiet rebellion of simplicity, the self-assurance of comfort, the unspoken intensity of gaze, all these ideas existed within the brand's DNA. Jungkook simply unlocked them for a generation that communicates visually, emotionally, and instinctively. Another key takeaway is how his campaigns influence fashion dialogue across borders. When Jungkook appeared in Calvin Klein's denim line, it didn't just trend, it reshaped the conversation about body image, comfort, and expression. Audiences responded not to extravagance, but to realness. The report identifies this as the new luxury, truth as aesthetic. Jungkook embodies that philosophy so naturally that every frame feels like an invitation rather than a performance. The global fashion ecosystem operates on competition, but Jungkook's influence has created an anomaly where collaboration now takes cues from his presence. Rival brands adjust their release schedules, influencers mimic his campaign tone, and stylists dissect his looks to predict the next visual movement. Calvin Klein, as a result, is not simply ahead, it's in a different lane altogether, powered by the rare synergy of artistry and authenticity that Jungkook represents. What makes this dominance unreal, as the report calls it, is not only the numbers, but the depth behind them. Numbers reveal visibility. Jungkook reveals relevance. Every chart and metric tells of engagement. But beneath them lies the transformation of what fashion means today. Calvin Klein has always sold an idea of confidence. Now it sells an emotion coded through Jungkook's presence. Something that feels timeless yet immediate. Even within Calvin Klein's corporate analysis, internal reports point to an internal culture shift. Employees, designers, and creative teams reportedly use the term Jungkook Standard to describe the new bar of impact where simplicity meets universality. That kind of internal influence is almost unheard of. Most ambassadors impact external metrics. Jungkook redefines the mindset inside the brand itself. His collaboration is proof that authenticity is not just a marketing buzzword, it's a measurable force. When a global fashion house sees growth in not only revenue but also relevance, the catalyst is clear. Jungkook's name has turned Calvin Klein into a symbol of cultural dialogue, merging East and West, art and commerce, individuality and global unity. And while analysts can calculate metrics and growth percentages, they can't quantify the way people respond when Jungkook appears in a campaign. It's not about fame, it's about connection. The moment he appears, the world stops scrolling for a second longer. That pause, that instant of attention, is the real power behind every number in that report. The underlying reason is simple yet profound: people believe him. Consumers aren't buying into a campaign, they're aligning with a perspective. Jungkook's visual narrative for Calvin Klein is calm, confident, and grounded, matching what modern consumers seek: identity without arrogance, style without pretense. His tone as a public figure resonates with what Calvin Klein represents at its core: authenticity without excess. This alignment has created a perfect loop. Calvin Klein strengthens Jungkook's global visibility in fashion, while Jungkook strengthens Calvin Klein's relevance among digitally active youth. The report even uses the term cultural symbiosis, a rare phrase in market analytics, to describe this relationship. It means that both sides feed each other's energy, resulting in mutual amplification that surpasses traditional celebrity brand dynamics. The most revealing data in the global report focuses on consumer demographics. Calvin Klein's average buyer age decreased for the first time in years, shifting from the early 30 seconds to the mid-20 seconds. This shift isn't just about attracting younger audiences, it's about rejuvenating the brand's entire identity. Jungkook's image didn't alienate older customers either. Instead, it bridged generations, showing that timeless simplicity can still feel modern when represented by the right figure. Calvin Klein's visual language also changed subtly after Jungkook joined. The lighting, tone, and framing of campaigns began to mirror his artistic presence, quiet but powerful. His influence reached beyond the marketing team. It extended to design discussions. The creative department reportedly studied how his physical proportions, posture, and aesthetic sensibility could inspire product direction. His body language became a design reference, guiding the brand's visual storytelling into something that feels more human than staged. That's the kind of effect money can't buy. Advertising can push visibility, but it can't create identity. Jungkook did. The report notes that Calvin Klein's search relevance increased even during months without active campaigns, meaning the public kept looking for him and the brand together. This kind of sustained curiosity proves that the association has become cultural rather than seasonal. Every great brand partnership in history has a turning point the moment it transcends business and becomes symbolic. For Calvin Klein, that moment arrived when Jungkook's imagery began to circulate globally, not through paid ads, but through user-generated content. Thousands of fans and fashion enthusiasts recreated his looks, reviewed his outfits, and discussed his interpretation of modern masculinity. Suddenly, Calvin Klein wasn't just a fashion brand, it became a cultural movement fueled by individual expression. The report includes a case study of one campaign drop that shows the extent of this influence. When Jungkook's Jeans Reimagined campaign launched, online traffic to Calvin Klein's official website surged 170% within the first 48 hours. Product sellouts occurred in multiple regions, and resale prices for those items on secondary markets tripled. The demand was not only about scarcity, it was about meaning. People wanted to own a piece of what Jungkook represented: subtle strength and unspoken confidence. One of the most remarkable insights in the report comes from the Psychological Impact Survey. It shows that consumers who encountered Jungkook's Calvin Klein campaigns developed a stronger brand memory compared to other ambassador-led promotions. That means his campaigns didn't just attract attention, they stayed in people's minds longer. This phenomenon, called memory anchoring, is incredibly valuable in marketing. It suggests that viewers link Calvin Klein's identity with Jungkook's presence at a deep, almost subconscious level. That anchoring has created a ripple effect across industries. Other luxury labels, particularly those in Europe and the US, began studying Calvin Klein's success pattern, trying to replicate its balance between cultural relevance and commercial impact. But the report makes it clear: what Calvin Klein achieved through Jungkook isn't replicable by formula. It's the product of alignment between personality and philosophy, a perfect intersection of human character and brand vision. Jungkook's impact also reshaped Calvin Klein's digital infrastructure. The brand began optimizing its online store experience, integrating visual cues inspired by his campaign aesthetics. Clean lines, black and white contrasts, and a minimalist flow that mirrors his calm composure became standard. The redesign was more than aesthetic, it was strategic. Every visual cue reminded users of the same feeling they got when they saw Jungkook's campaign images. The entire shopping experience turned into a continuation of his presence. From a cultural economics perspective, the report calls Jungkook the intangible asset. He doesn't just represent Calvin Klein, he elevates it to an idea. In a world saturated with influencer partnerships, authenticity is rare. But Jungkook embodies it in a way that transcends marketing language. His relationship with Calvin Klein feels like creative storytelling rather than commercial transaction, which is why audiences respond differently. They see sincerity instead of strategy. When the global report breaks down media reach by category, Calvin Klein's exposure in editorial features, online publications, and fashion commentaries skyrocketed by 210% after Jungkook joined. The difference is in tone. Most articles didn't discuss just clothing. They discussed meaning. They analyzed what Jungkook's portrayal says about beauty, confidence, and individuality in the modern age. No other brand figure in recent years has triggered that level of cultural discourse through still imagery alone. And then there's the economic translation, the tangible outcome. Calvin Klein's brand valuation reportedly increased significantly, with analysts attributing part of that rise to the Jungkook effect. Investors recognized not only the marketing power, but the long-term cultural relevance that comes with him. The report emphasizes that in fashion economics, longevity is the most valuable currency. Jungkook doesn't just make Calvin Klein trendy, he makes it timeless again. The word unreal in the report's title feels earned because this isn't the story of a brand chasing fame. It's the story of a brand finding its new center of gravity through one person. Calvin Klein, once synonymous with Western simplicity, now represents global sophistication. The change didn't come from rebranding or slogans. It came from a face that embodies modern duality, calm yet powerful, silent yet magnetic. That's why financial experts continue to cite Jungkook's impact, not as a temporary phenomenon, but as a blueprint for cultural branding in the next decade. Calvin Klein's success underlines a truth the industry is only beginning to grasp. Influence is no longer measured by frequency, it's measured by authenticity. Jungkook's authenticity doesn't need explanation. It communicates through presence, and that presence has turned into an economic wave, reshaping one of the world's most iconic brands.